Picture this. You're standing in a crowded Roman marketplace, circa 50 BCE. The air reeks of fish guts, unwashed bodies, and whatever that vendor is claiming is fresh bread. You've got a message that could literally save the Republic. But here's the thing, everyone around you wants you dead. The scroll in your hand? It looks like complete gibberish. Random letters that make about as much sense as your cousin's cryptocurrency investment strategy. But Julius Caesar himself wrote this message, and if you can't decode it, Rome burns tonight. So before we dive into this blood-soaked journey through the history of encryption, smash that like button if you've ever had to keep a secret. Drop a comment telling me the weirdest thing you've ever had to hide. And trust me, after hearing these stories, your browser history won't seem so bad. Now grab something stronger than coffee. Maybe check your locks are secure, and let's walk through 3,000 years of humans desperately trying to keep other humans from reading their mail. You know what's funny? We think we invented privacy concerns with social media. But imagine being that Roman messenger, knowing that if you mess up this one simple cipher, you'll be feeding lions by sunset. The Caesar cipher, yeah, that's what we call it now, was basically the ancient world's version of Pig Latin. Shift every letter 3 places down the alphabet. A becomes D, B becomes E, and suddenly your grocery list looks like state secrets. Except Caesar used it for actual state secrets. Military movements, assassination plots, the kind of stuff that makes your WhatsApp messages look like nursery rhymes. But here's where it gets dark. You're not just carrying a message, you're carrying a death sentence if the wrong person figures it out. And trust me, they're trying. Every tavern you pass, every checkpoint you cross, there's someone who'd love to get their hands on that scroll. The Gauls would pay in gold. The Senate's enemies would make you rich beyond imagination. But you keep walking, because in ancient Rome, encryption wasn't just clever, it was survival. The smell of crucifixions along the Appian Way reminds you what happens to spies. Yeah, they didn't mess around back then. Now you might be thinking this is all ancient history, but let me blow your mind for a second. That same basic principle Caesar used, shifting letters around, it's the foundation of every encrypted message you've ever sent, every password you've ever created, every secure transaction you've ever made. We just got better at it. Instead of shifting 3 letters, we shift billions of bits. Instead of one messenger, we have fiber optic cables. But the game never changed. Someone's always trying to keep a secret, and someone else is always trying to steal it. The craziest part, Caesar's enemies eventually figured it out. Took them a while, but they cracked it. How? The same way hackers crack codes today. Frequency analysis. C in Latin. Just like in English, some letters show up more than others. E is common, Q is rare, so even if you scramble everything, the patterns remain. It's like trying to disguise yourself by wearing a fake mustache. Sure, you look different, but you still walk the same way. And in the world of encryption, walking the same way gets you killed. So Caesar had to get creative. Multiple shifts, fake messages, sending 5 messengers with 4 carrying lies. The kind of paranoid behavior that would make modern preppers look relaxed. But it worked for a while, until someone else got smarter, and that's the story we're about to tell. 3,000 years of humans getting progressively more paranoid, and progressively more clever about hiding their secrets. Fast forward a few centuries, and you're now standing in a monastery in medieval Europe. The year is 825 CE, and the air smells like moldy parchment and whatever Brother Marcus claims is vegetable soup. You're watching a monk hunched over a manuscript, but he's not copying Bible verses. He's encoding diplomatic messages for Charlemagne, using something that would make Caesar weep with envy. They call it polyalphabetic substitution, but you can call it the beginning of real cryptography. Each letter in the message uses a different cipher alphabet. It's like having multiple locks on your door, except each lock changes every time someone touches the handle. The monk's fingers are stained with ink, and not the regular kind. This is special ink that only appears when you heat the parchment. Yeah, invisible ink. In 825, while most of Europe couldn't read regular visible writing, these guys were playing with chemistry and cryptography like they were running a medieval CIA. You watch him carefully heat a blank piece of vellum over a candle, and slowly words appear. Instructions for defending against Viking raids. Trade route secrets worth more than gold. The kind of intelligence that determines whether your village gets pillaged next Tuesday. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you about medieval encryption. It wasn't just about the message, it was about the messenger too. See, you couldn't just Google how to decrypt something back then. You needed the key, and the key was often a person, a living, breathing human, who knew the system, which meant keeping that human alive was just as important as keeping the message secret. Imagine being that guy. Every journey you take, you're not just carrying information, you are the information. Bandits don't just want your purse, they want your brain. The Arabs, meanwhile, were absolutely crushing it in the encryption game. While Europeans were still figuring out basic substitution, Arab mathematicians like Al-Kindi were writing literal textbooks on cryptanalysis. They discovered frequency analysis independently and turned code breaking into a science. You could walk into a library in Baghdad and find manuscripts on breaking ciphers that wouldn't look out of place in a modern computer science course. They had statistical analysis, pattern recognition, the kind of systematic approach that makes you realize maybe your 10th century ancestors weren't as primitive as you thought. And the messages they were protecting. Trade routes to China, mathematical discoveries that wouldn't reach Europe for centuries. Medical knowledge that could cure diseases. Europeans were still blaming on bad air and angry gods. This wasn't just military intelligence anymore. This was civilization-changing information, locked behind ciphers that would take armies of scribes years to crack. Unless, of course, you had the key. Then it was as easy as reading this script. The monasteries became encryption hubs, not because monks were particularly sneaky, but because they were the only ones who could read and write reliably. You want to send a secret message. Better hope Brother Francis is sober enough to encode it properly. One mistake, one letter out of place, and your carefully crafted diplomatic message becomes gibberish. Or worse, it becomes something else entirely. Imagine accidentally declaring war because someone mixed up their cipher alphabets. It happened more than you'd think. The real innovation came when someone realized you could hide messages in plain sight. Steganography. They hide your secret message inside a normal-looking letter. Every third word spells out the real message. Or maybe it's in the first letter of each line. Suddenly, that boring letter about crop yields is actually military intelligence. That love poem, battle plans. Every document becomes suspicious. Every monk becomes a potential spy. The paranoia was justified. By the late medieval period, everyone was encrypting everything. Trade guilds had their own ciphers. Lovers developed secret codes. Even recipes were encrypted, because apparently medieval people took their cooking secrets as seriously as nuclear launch codes. You think your grandma's secret ingredient is protected? These people were encoding bread recipes like they contained the meaning of life. But let me paint you a picture of what actually happened when encryption failed. The year is 1270, and you're watching the Siege of Tunis. A messenger arrives with an encrypted message for King Louis IX of France. The cipher is complex, the message urgent, but the scribe who encoded it was tired, maybe drunk, definitely underpaid. He mixed up two symbols, just two. The message that should have read retreat immediately instead reads advance at dawn. 20,000 men die because of two mixed-up squiggles. The king himself dies of dysentery, which, let's be honest, was probably going to happen anyway, but still, two symbols. 20,000 dead. This is the reality of pre-modern encryption that nobody talks about. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't foolproof, it was messy, human, and catastrophically error-prone. You're dealing with people who can barely see by candlelight, working with quills that need constant sharpening, on parchment that costs more than their monthly wages. One sneeze at the wrong moment, and suddenly your encrypted message looks like abstract art. The Venetians, though, they turned encryption into an art form. By the 1400s, Venice was basically running on encrypted communication. Every merchant, every diplomat, every spy had their own cipher. The city's archives still contain thousands of encrypted messages that historians are still trying to crack today. Some of them are probably grocery lists, but we'll never know because the Venetians were that paranoid about everything. They encrypted their encrypted messages. They had ciphers within ciphers. It was like cryptographic nesting dolls, if nesting dolls could start wars. You want to know how serious they were? The Council of Ten, Venice's secret intelligence service, had a cipher that required 3 different people to decode. Each person only knew one part of the system. They couldn't even trust their own spies completely. It's like having a password that requires 3 different people to each enter their part, except if any of them dies, gets drunk, or decides they'd rather work for the Pope, your entire intelligence network collapses. And speaking of the Pope, the Vatican had its own encryption systems that make modern conspiracy theorists look absolutely correct. They had ciphers that were only known to the Pope and maybe 2 other people, messages that, if intercepted and decoded, would have brought down kingdoms, or at least really embarrassed some cardinals. The Vatican Secret Archives, which they've recently renamed because apparently secret sounded too suspicious, contains encrypted documents that they still won't let researchers fully examine. What are they hiding? Probably financial records showing they were broke, but it's more fun to imagine alien contact. But here's the kicker. All of this elaborate encryption, all these complex ciphers, they all had one fatal flaw. They relied on humans. Humans who could be bribed, tortured, or just get drunk and chatty. You could have the most sophisticated cipher in the world, but if your messenger decides 50 gold pieces sounds better than loyalty, your encryption means nothing. And in medieval times, 50 gold pieces always sounded better than loyalty. Hell, 5 gold pieces sounded better than loyalty. 1 gold piece and a decent meal probably did the trick. Comment below if you would have survived as a medieval codekeeper, or if you would have sold out for a hot meal and a bed that didn't have fleas. Because let's be honest, most of us would have cracked under a strongly worded threat, let alone actual torture. The Renaissance hits, and suddenly you're in Florence 1470. The air smells like oil paint and political conspiracy. You're watching Leon Battista Alberti, a man so smart he makes Da Vinci look focused as he invents something that will change encryption forever, the cipher disk. It's basically 2 circles of letters that rotate against each other, like a combination lock made of alphabet soup. Simple, elegant, and absolutely revolutionary. Before this, changing your cipher meant memorizing new patterns. Now, just turn the disk. It's like going from memorizing phone numbers to just hitting speed dial. Alberti is showing this device to Cosimo de' Medici, and you can see the old man's eyes light up like he's just been handed the nuclear codes, which, in 15th century terms, he basically has. The Medici banking empire runs on information. Who owes what, who's planning to default, which pope is embezzling this week. One encrypted message can move more money than 1,000 soldiers can steal, and now they have a cipher that can change with every single letter. It's not just an evolution, it's a revolution. But here's what the history books don't tell you. While Alberti is revolutionizing cryptography, half of Florence is still sending messages by stuffing them in the rectums of livestock. Yeah, you heard that right. Diplomatic pouches? More like diplomatic pork chops. You think your job is bad? Imagine being the guy who has to retrieve state secrets from inside a goat, and the goat's still alive, and angry, and you have to do this in front of the Duke while maintaining professional composure. The cipher disk spreads across Europe faster than the plague, which is saying something because the plague was really good at spreading. Every court wants one. Every merchant needs one. Suddenly there's an arms race, but instead of weapons, it's wheels of letters. The Germans make them out of brass. The French add extra rings. The English, being English, claim they invented it first. Meanwhile, the Ottomans are looking at all this and laughing because they've been using similar devices for decades, but nobody asks the Ottomans anything because that would require admitting they might be smarter. You're now in a Venetian counting house, watching a merchant encrypt trade routes to Constantinople. Each turn of the disk represents thousands of ducats, life and death for entire merchant families. One wrong turn, one misaligned letter, and ships full of silk end up in pirate hands. The merchant's hands are shaking, not from fear, but from the arthritis he got from turning these damned disks 12 hours a day. Crypto-arthritis, the occupational hazard nobody talks about. The really clever part: Alberti didn't just invent the device, he invented the system. Multiple alphabets, switched at predetermined points in the message. It's like having a conversation where you change languages every sentence, except the languages are all made up, and only you and one other person know them. The Spanish are using it to coordinate their conquest of the Americas. The Portuguese are using it to hide their trade routes to India. The Italians are using it to coordinate who gets to poison which rival family this week. But the best part, the artists are in on it too. Michelangelo is encoding messages in his sculptures. Leonardo da Vinci is hiding military secrets in his paintings. That mysterious smile on the Mona Lisa could be hiding a cipher. Probably isn't, but could be. Every Renaissance masterpiece becomes a potential dead drop. The birth of Venus, maybe it's actually the birth of a new encryption key. The paranoia is delicious. Now you're standing in a Spanish dungeon. 1587. The smell hits you first. Human waste, rotting straw, and fear sweat. That particular cocktail of aromas that says someone's about to have a very bad day. You're watching the Spanish Inquisition work over a Protestant merchant who made the mistake of carrying an encrypted letter. They don't care what the message says. The fact that it's encrypted is enough. Heresy, they call it. Trafficking with the devil. Because apparently Satan really loves substitution ciphers. The Spanish have become encryption experts, but not in the way you'd think. They're experts at breaking people who use encryption. Physical cryptanalysis, you might call it. Why spend months trying to crack a cipher when you can crack a person in an afternoon? The merchant breaks after they show him the instruments. Doesn't even take actual torture, just the threat. The message? A love letter to his mistress. Encrypted because his wife knows how to read. Now he's going to burn at the stake because he couldn't keep it in his pants and thought a cipher would help. Meanwhile, across the channel, Elizabeth I's spymaster Francis Walsingham is running the world's first modern intelligence service. His office smells like tobacco, wet wool, and ambition. Every intercepted letter, every encrypted message, every suspicious package ends up here. He's got a team of mathematicians, linguists, and forgers working around the clock. It's basically the NSA, but with worse dental hygiene and better fashion sense. Walsingham's crown jewel is Thomas Phillips, a man so good at breaking codes that he's essentially performing magic, short, pockmarked, speaks 6 languages, and can forge anyone's handwriting. He's the kind of guy who looks at an encrypted message and sees patterns the way you see words. He breaks Mary Queen of Scots' cipher, the one she thought was unbreakable. The decoded messages detail her plan to assassinate Elizabeth. Mary loses her head, literally, because Phillips was better at math than her cryptographer. But here's the thing, Mary's cipher wasn't even that bad. It was actually pretty sophisticated for its time. Symbols for whole words, nulls to confuse frequency analysis, the works. The problem was, she used it for everything. Every letter, every note, the same cipher. It's like using the same password for every account, except instead of losing your Netflix, you lose your neck. Phillips didn't break the cipher so much as he had enough messages to basically brute force it through pattern recognition. The execution of Mary Queen of Scots sends shockwaves through European courts. Suddenly everyone realizes that encryption isn't enough. You need operational security. You need to change your ciphers regularly. You need to assume everyone is reading everything. The paranoia ratchets up another notch. Diplomats start using multiple encryption methods in the same message. A substitution cipher wrapped in a transposition cipher stuffed inside a steganographic letter about wool prices. The Dutch, being practical people, decide to monetize the whole thing. They set up cipher schools. Want to learn encryption? That'll be 50 guilders. Want to learn decryption? 100 guilders. Want to learn both? 200 guilders, and they throw in a free cipher disk. It's capitalism meeting cryptography. And it's beautiful. They're literally selling secrets about keeping secrets. The Dutch are also running the world's most sophisticated commercial espionage network, but they encrypt their business records so well that modern historians still can't figure out exactly how much money they were making. By 1600, encryption has become so common that not using it is suspicious. You're a merchant in Hamburg, and you send an unencrypted letter about grain prices. Within days, you're being investigated for secretly signaling someone, because surely nobody actually just writes about grain prices. The grain prices must be code for something. Troops movements, ship departures, Protestant gathering times. The paranoia has come full circle. The 30 Years' War kicks off, and suddenly everyone needs better encryption. You're watching a Habsburg military commander try to coordinate troop movements across the Holy Roman Empire, which is neither holy nor Roman nor really an empire, but whatever. He's got messages going to dozens of different commanders, each using different ciphers because nobody trusts anybody. The Swedish are intercepting everything. The French are intercepting everything. Hell, even the commander's own allies are intercepting everything. The battlefield becomes a cryptographic nightmare. Imagine trying to change your passwords while people are actively shooting at you. That's what these military commanders are dealing with. New cipher keys need to be distributed, but the messengers keep getting killed, so they start using backup ciphers, and backups for the backups. One German regiment ends up with so many different cipher systems that they can't decode their own messages. They miss a crucial battle because nobody can figure out what anyone else is saying. Then there's the Ottoman Empire, sitting there with popcorn, watching European cryptography evolve, while they've been doing this stuff for centuries. The Sultan's court has encryption methods that make European ciphers look like children's games. They're using numerical codes, astronomical tables, and poetry as cipher keys. You want to decode an Ottoman message? Better know your Rumi, and your algebra, and probably astronomy too. It's interdisciplinary encryption, centuries before universities invented interdisciplinary studies. The Catholic Church, not to be outdone, develops its own encryption systems that are basically theological puzzles. Bible verses as keys, Saints' days as cipher changes, Latin grammatical structures as the base. It's brilliant and completely insane. You need to be a biblical scholar just to read routine correspondence. The Pope's messages are so heavily encrypted that sometimes even the intended recipients can't decode them. There's probably still a papal bull from 1634 sitting in some cathedral, waiting for someone to figure out what the hell it says. Private citizens start getting creative too. Love letters encoded in musical notation. Business contracts hidden in recipe books. Political pamphlets disguised as religious sermons, with the real message encoded in the biblical references. You could walk through any European city carrying treasonous documents, and as long as they looked like sheet music or cooking instructions, nobody would look twice. Unless, of course, someone tried to play the music or cook the recipe. Then you'd better run. The innovation that really changes everything. The homophonic cipher. Instead of each letter always being replaced by the same symbol, now each letter can be replaced by multiple different symbols. It's like having 10 different costumes for the same actor. Frequency analysis becomes almost useless. The letter E might be represented by 12 different symbols, while Z only gets one. It's statistical camouflage, and it's absolutely brilliant. Drop a comment if you think you could have survived the cryptographic chaos of the 30 Years' War, or if you would have just given up and communicated entirely through interpretive dance. Because honestly, at this point, interpretive dance might have been more secure than some of these cipher systems. Welcome to 1700s France. You're in Versailles, and everything smells like perfume, trying desperately to cover up the fact that nobody here bathes. You're watching the Black Chamber at work, Europe's most sophisticated code-breaking operation. Every letter entering or leaving France gets opened, copied, decoded if necessary, resealed and sent on its way. It's mass surveillance, powdered wig edition. The boss here is Antoine Rossignol, a man so good at breaking codes that foreign diplomats literally change their travel plans to avoid French territory. Rossignol isn't just breaking codes, he's revolutionizing the entire field. He develops the Great Cipher, a code so complex that it won't be broken for 200 years. It uses numbers to represent syllables, not letters. Some numbers mean nothing. They're just there to confuse you. Others change meaning depending on what comes before or after. It's like trying to read a book where every page is written in a different language. Half the words are fake, and the real meaning is hidden in the punctuation. You watch him decode a Spanish dispatch while eating breakfast. The Spanish ambassador thinks he's being clever, using a new cipher every week. Rossignol cracks it before his coffee gets cold. He's not even showing off. This is just Tuesday for him. The decoded message reveals Spanish troop movements, trade negotiations, and surprisingly, a recipe for paella that the ambassador doesn't want his wife to know he's sharing. Even culinary secrets aren't safe from the Black Chamber. But here's the dark side nobody mentions. The Black Chamber isn't just reading mail, they're rewriting it. Diplomatic letters get subtle changes. A yeses becomes maybe. A promise becomes a suggestion. Wars are started and prevented based on forged letters that the recipients never know are fake. You're watching the birth of disinformation campaigns, and it's happening with quill pens and sealing wax. One modified letter causes a diplomatic incident between Austria and Prussia that takes 3 years to resolve. The rest of Europe, obviously, starts freaking out. Every country creates its own Black Chamber. London, Vienna, Madrid, they're all opening each other's mail like nosy neighbors on steroids. The postal system becomes a joke. Everyone knows their letters are being read, so they start writing fake letters to mislead the code breakers. Diplomats are sending 5 letters saying different things, hoping one gets through unmodified. It's like playing telephone, but with international consequences. Meanwhile, in coffee houses across Europe, Regular people are developing their own codes. Merchants create trading ciphers that would make modern hedge funds jealous. Scientists encode their discoveries to prevent theft. Newton and Leibniz are literally encoding calculus to argue about who invented it first. Even gossip gets encrypted. Society ladies develop fan codes, handkerchief signals, and flower languages. That bouquet isn't just pretty, it's calling someone's mother a strumpet in carefully arranged botanical insults. The American colonies get in on the action too. Benjamin Franklin, that magnificent bastard, is running intelligence operations that would make the CIA proud. He's using invisible ink made from ferrous sulfate, writing between the lines of boring letters about the weather. He develops a cipher wheel that he claims is unbreakable. It's not, but it takes the British long enough to crack it that the revolution succeeds anyway. Sometimes in cryptography, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be annoying enough that your enemies give up. The year is 1775, and you're in a basement in Boston, watching the Sons of Liberty plan treason. The air is thick with pipe smoke and revolutionary fervor. They're using a book cipher based on Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England, which is deliciously ironic, using British law books to plan the overthrow of British rule. Each message references page numbers, line numbers, word numbers. Without the exact same edition of the book, the message is just a bunch of random numbers. Paul Revere isn't just a silversmith with a fast horse. He's running an intelligence network that puts most modern spy agencies to shame. The whole one if by land, two if by seas thing, that's just the part that made it into the children's books. The real communication system involves church bells, laundry lines, and tavern songs. Every seemingly innocent activity is potentially coded communication. That drunk guy singing off-key in the corner. He might be transmitting British troop positions through the verse structure. The British, meanwhile, are intercepting everything but understanding nothing. They've got rooms full of captured messages that might as well be written in Martian. They try everything: frequency analysis, pattern recognition, good old-fashioned torture. Nothing works consistently. The Americans keep changing their systems, using regional dialects and cultural references that British cryptographers don't understand. Try decoding a message when the key is a joke about Connecticut Yankees that only makes sense if you grew up in Massachusetts. Then there's Benedict Arnold, and this is where encryption gets really dark. He's encoding messages to the British using Blackstone too, but a different edition. For months he's sending intelligence that gets American soldiers killed, all hidden in seemingly innocent business correspondence about his shipping company. When he's finally discovered, it's not because someone broke his code, it's because his handler, Major John Andre, gets caught with the decoded messages in his boot. Sometimes the weakest link in encryption isn't the math, it's the idiot who writes down the decoded version. The French Revolution kicks off, and suddenly everyone's encrypting everything again. The guillotine is working overtime, and nobody wants their correspondence to be Exhibit A at their trial. You're in Paris, 1793, watching someone try to send a message to their émigré relatives. They're using a cipher based on Rousseau's social contract, which is either very clever or very stupid, depending on whether the Revolutionary Tribunal has a sense of irony. They don't. The sender loses their head, but the cipher is actually never broken. The revolutionaries just assume guilt, because encryption equals conspiracy in their minds. The Napoleon era brings military encryption to a whole new level. You're watching the Grande Armée march across Europe, coordinating hundreds of thousands of troops using codes that change daily. Napoleon's personal cipher, the Great Napoleon Cipher, uses a combination of numbers and symbols that reference everything from classical literature to his own love letters to Josephine. It's narcissistic encryption. You need to understand Napoleon's ego to break Napoleon's codes. But here's the beautiful irony. The more complex encryption becomes, the more vulnerable it is to simple human error. A tired code clerk transposes two numbers, and suddenly an order to retreat becomes an order to attack. A messenger gets drunk and loses his cipher key, stranding an entire regiment without communication. The Battle of Leipzig, the largest battle in European history before World War I, is partially lost because someone spills wine on the cipher tables. 500,000 men, the fate of Europe, undone by a clumsy waiter. By the early 1800s, encryption has become an industry. You can buy cipher devices from catalogs. There are schools teaching cryptography to merchants' sons. The London Times runs encrypted personal ads that are definitely not people arranging affairs and illegal business deals. Definitely not. These are all completely innocent messages about lost dogs and found umbrellas that just happen to be in code for no suspicious reason whatsoever. The diplomatic world has become a cryptographic madhouse. Every embassy has a cipher clerk, usually some poor bastard who speaks 17 languages and hasn't seen sunlight in years. You're watching one in the Austrian embassy in London, encoding a message about British naval movements. He's using 3 different cipher systems layered on top of each other, referencing a key that changes based on the date, the weather in Vienna, and the opening price of Habsburg bonds. It takes him 6 hours to encode a message that says, essentially, the British have boats. The commercial world isn't far behind. The Rothschild banking family creates a private courier and encryption system that's faster and more secure than most government communications. They're using carrier pigeons with encrypted messages tied to their legs, because apparently regular mail isn't dramatic enough. These pigeons are worth more than most people's houses. Shooting one is considered an act of war against capitalism itself. The Rothschilds know about the Battle of Waterloo before the British government does, all thanks to encrypted pigeon post. Then telegraphy arrives, and everything changes overnight. Suddenly you can send a message across the world in minutes instead of months. But here's the catch. Everyone can intercept telegraph messages. It's like shouting your secrets in a crowded room and hoping nobody speaks your language. The telegraph operators themselves become security risks. You're trusting some guy in a relay station in the middle of nowhere not to sell your commercial secrets to your competitors. Spoiler alert, they absolutely do. The Americans invent the root cipher during their Civil War. Messages are written in a grid, then read off in a complex pattern that changes based on predetermined keys. It's like a word search puzzle from hell. Confederate and Union forces are intercepting each other's telegrams constantly, leading to an encryption arms race fought with pencil and paper. General Grant's cipher operator encodes messages while bullets literally fly over his head. The operator for General Lee is doing the same thing. 50 yards away, they can see each other. They wave sometimes. War is weird. The commercial telegraph companies start offering encrypted message services. For an extra fee, they'll encode your message using their proprietary cipher. Of course they keep copies of everything, building vast archives of encoded messages that historians are still trying to decode today. Some Victorian gentleman's encrypted telegram might contain vital historical information, or it might be him asking his mistress to wear the blue dress. We'll never know because the telegraph company lost the keys in a fire, or sold them, or maybe they never existed, and the whole thing was a scam. By 1850, encryption has become so commonplace that not using it seems suspicious. International treaties are being negotiated in code. Scientific discoveries are being published in cipher to establish priority. Even birthday greetings are being encrypted because why not? The world has become addicted to secrecy. Everyone has something to hide, and everyone assumes everyone else is hiding something. Comment below if you think our modern obsession with privacy and encryption is new, or if you realize we're just continuing a tradition that goes back centuries. Also, let me know if you've ever tried to create your own cipher. Did it work, or did your little brother crack it in 5 minutes using frequency analysis he learned from YouTube? It's 1854, and you're standing in a London gentleman's club watching Charles Wheatstone demonstrate his new cipher device to a room full of skeptical aristocrats. The place reeks of cigars, leather, and inherited wealth. Wheatstone pulls out what looks like a pocket watch, had a baby with a typewriter. It's the Playfair cipher device, and it's about to revolutionize field encryption. 2 letters at a time, encoded using a grid system that's simple enough to memorize but complex enough to frustrate enemy code breakers. The British military adopts it immediately, then classifies it so hard that most people won't know it exists for another 40 years. You follow the Playfair cipher to the Crimean War, where British officers are using it to coordinate attacks, while Russians are still using ciphers from Napoleon's time. The battlefield telegraphs are singing with encrypted messages. But here's the problem nobody anticipated. The cipher is too good. Officers in the field can't decode messages fast enough. You're watching a lieutenant try to decode urgent orders while Turkish allies are literally bleeding out around him. By the time he figures out the message says retreat immediately, the enemy has already overrun their position. Sometimes in cryptography, perfect security is perfectly useless if you're dead before you can decode it. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the American Civil War has turned into a cryptographer's fever dream. The Union's root cipher is working well, except when it isn't. You're in a telegraph station in Maryland, watching an operator encode Lincoln's direct orders to General McClellan. The operator is drunk. Not tipsy, not buzzed, absolutely plastered. He encodes the message perfectly, then sends it to the wrong destination. Confederate forces intercept it, can't decode it, but know something important is happening. They shift their troops based on the encrypted message they can't even read. The battle is won by the Union anyway, because McClellan never got the message and did the opposite of what Lincoln wanted, which accidentally turned out to be the right move. The Confederates are using a cipher disk called the Confederate Cipher Wheel, which sounds impressive until you realize it's basically Alberti's invention with a southern accent. They're also experimenting with dictionary codes, where entire words are replaced with numbers corresponding to page and word positions in a specific dictionary, except different units are using different dictionaries. The Navy's using Webster's, the Army's using Johnson's, and one regiment in Texas is using a Spanish-English dictionary, because that's all they could find. The resulting confusion makes the Tower of Babel look like a successful communication exercise. Then there's the Victorian fascination with mechanical encryption. Every inventor and his brother is creating cipher machines. You're at the Great Exhibition watching demonstrations of devices that look like medieval torture instruments had offspring with steam engines. There's one that uses organ pipes to encode messages musically. Another uses colored lights. One particularly ambitious inventor creates a cipher machine that requires 2 operators pedaling simultaneously, like a cryptographic tandem bicycle. It works perfectly until one operator gets tired, and the whole message turns to gibberish. The telegraph companies are now the most powerful intelligence organizations in the world, and they know it. Western Union has more information about global commerce and politics than most governments. They're reading everything, encrypted or not. Their operators develop a side business selling information to the highest bidder. Stock tips, affair confirmations, military movements, it's all for sale if you know who to ask. The companies claim they respect message privacy while simultaneously maintaining detailed files on every customer's communication patterns. Sound familiar? This is 1860, and surveillance capitalism is already in full swing. But the real revolution is happening in mathematics. Charles Babbage, when he's not designing computers that won't be built for another century, is destroying cipher systems for fun. He breaks the Vigenère cipher, which everyone thought was unbreakable, then doesn't tell anyone for years because he's too busy with other projects. It's like solving world hunger and forgetting to mention it because you were distracted by an interesting butterfly. The year is 1870, and you're in a basement under the streets of Paris during the Prussian siege. The city is surrounded, starving, and about to get really creative with encryption. The French are using carrier pigeons to communicate with the outside world, but not just any carrier pigeons. These birds are carrying microfilm, thousands of messages shrunk down to the size of a rice grain, many of them encrypted. The Prussians are shooting down pigeons like it's a very morbid carnival game, but enough get through to maintain communication. One pigeon, named Napoleon, because of course carries military intelligence that saves an entire army corps. They build him a statue. The statue gets eaten during the famine. Paris is complicated. The Prussians, being German, and therefore obsessed with efficiency, have developed a military cipher system so complex that their own officers can't use it. You're watching a Prussian colonel try to encode a simple message about supply requirements. It involves 3 different codebooks, a slide rule, and what appears to be interpretive dance. The message that finally gets sent is so garbled that headquarters sends back 3 wagons of women's undergarments instead of ammunition. The colonel shoots the telegraph operator. Not fatally, just enough to make a point. German efficiency has its limits. Japan opens to the West and immediately realizes it needs modern cryptography. Within 20 years, they go from using basically no encryption to having one of the most sophisticated systems in the world. You're in Tokyo, 1890, watching Japanese cryptographers take Western cipher systems and improve them using concepts from Japanese language structure. They realize that having 3 different writing systems, kanji, hiragana, and katakana, gives them encoding options that make Western cryptographers weep with envy. A single Japanese message can be encrypted in ways that would require 3 different cipher systems in English. The British Empire is managing global communications through underwater telegraph cables, all encrypted with systems that are supposed to be state secrets, but which everyone knows because British telegraph operators keep defecting to higher paying jobs with other countries. You're in the cable station in Gibraltar, watching messages flow between London and India. Every message is encrypted, but the operators have been doing this so long they can recognize patterns without officially decoding anything. That message from the Viceroy to London. It's his weekly request for more funding. That urgent military communication. Someone's mistress is pregnant. Again, the operators place bets on message contents before decoding them. They're usually right. American business is revolutionizing commercial encryption. The Standard Oil Company develops a cipher system so complex that John D. Rockefeller himself can't decode his own messages. They have to hire a team of mathematicians just to handle routine business communication. You're watching one of these mathematicians slowly lose his mind trying to encode oil prices in a cipher that references Shakespeare, the Bible, and the Manhattan phone directory. The encoded message is longer than War and Peace. The actual message is 3 words: buy more oil. Then there's the emergence of criminal encryption. Organized crime figures realize that if governments and businesses can use codes, so can they. You're in a Chicago speakeasy, where Al Capone's predecessors are using playing card codes to coordinate illegal gambling operations. Each card represents different numbers, locations, or actions. A poker game is actually a complex negotiation about territory and protection money. The police intercept hundreds of these card messages, but never crack the system because they don't realize the jokers are the key to everything. The medical field starts encrypting patient records, not for privacy, but for professional protection. Doctors develop cipher systems to hide the fact that they have no idea what's wrong with most of their patients. That encoded diagnosis, it translates to probably won't die immediately. Medical encryption becomes so common that there are published guides for breaking doctors' handwriting ciphers, which honestly is still a problem today. By 1900, the world is drowning in codes and ciphers. Every major newspaper has a cryptography columnist. Yes, this was a real job. People would send in encrypted messages and challenge readers to break them. It's like crossword puzzles, but with the possibility of uncovering actual secrets. The London Times cipher column accidentally publishes real military intelligence 3 times in 1 year because someone thought it was just another puzzle. The military is not amused. The readers, however, are delighted. You're now in Russia, watching the Okhrana, the Tsar's secret police, operate the most paranoid intelligence service in history. They're not just intercepting and decoding messages, they're encoding fake revolutionary communications to confuse actual revolutionaries. Revolutionary groups are encrypting their plans, the police are encrypting fake plans, and everyone is so confused that several revolutionary meetings happen by accident because nobody can figure out which encrypted messages are real. One group shows up to overthrow the government and finds another group there to play cards, both responding to encrypted messages that may or may not have been police fabrications. The invention of the typewriter changes encryption forever. Suddenly, handwriting analysis becomes useless for identifying message senders. You're in a New York office watching a secretary type encrypted business communications at 60 words per minute. Each letter is mechanically perfect, identical, untraceable. Forgers are having the time of their lives. The typewriter companies start building cipher attachments directly into their machines. Buy our typewriter, get espionage capability for free. It's capitalism meets cryptography, and it's beautiful and terrifying. Wireless telegraphy arrives, and Marconi is telling everyone it's perfectly secure because signals dissipate over distance. He's wrong. So wrong. You're on a ship in the Atlantic watching the wireless operator receive messages from half the world. Most are encrypted, but the operator has been doing this long enough to recognize patterns. Military communications have a different rhythm than love letters. Business deals sound different from diplomatic cables. He can't read the messages, but he can guess their purpose with surprising accuracy. He starts a side business betting on message contents. He retires rich. The suffragettes develop their own cipher systems to coordinate protests without police interference. You're in a London tea home watching perfectly respectable ladies plan what would today be called domestic terrorism, all through messages hidden in knitting patterns. That scarf pattern. It's actually instructions for building an incendiary device. The color changes indicate targets. The police intercept hundreds of knitting patterns, analyze them for months, and conclude that Victorian women just really like complicated scarves. Military attaches from every major power are sitting in each other's capitals, openly spying and encoding everything they see. It's professional voyeurism with diplomatic immunity. You're watching the German military attaché in Paris encode observations about French artillery improvements. His cipher references Goethe, Wagner, and inexplicably French cooking techniques. The French know he's spying. He knows they know he knows they know. Everyone encodes their observations about everyone else encoding observations. It's surveillance inception, and everyone's playing along because that's just how international relations work now. By the dawn of the 20th century, encryption has become so ubiquitous that clear unencoded communication is seen as either naive or suspicious. Governments are employing thousands of cryptographers. Every major corporation has a cipher department. Even small businesses are encoding their correspondence. The local baker is encrypting his bread recipes. Your grandmother is cipher protecting her Christmas card list. Drop a comment telling me about the most elaborate way you've ever tried to keep a secret. Did you create your own code? Hide messages in weird places? Or did you just do what everyone else does and hope nobody cares enough to look? Because honestly, sometimes the best encryption is being too boring to bother with. August 1914. World War I explodes across Europe, and suddenly those gentlemen's games of cryptography become deadly serious. You're in room 40 of the British Admiralty, the most secret room in the Empire. It smells like stale tea, nervous sweat, and the particular mustiness of papers that could end civilization. The codebreakers here aren't soldiers. They're professors, librarians, puzzle enthusiasts, and at least one guy who's only here because he's good at crosswords. They're about to change warfare forever. The Germans are using a new diplomatic code called 0075, and they think it's unbreakable. They're wrong. You're watching Nigel de Grey, a publisher who somehow became a codebreaker, stare at intercepted messages until his eyes bleed. Not literally, but close enough. He's survived on nothing but tea and spite for 3 days. Then suddenly he cracks it. The look on his face isn't joy, it's the expression of someone who just realized they can read the enemy's mind, and they really wish they couldn't. The first message he fully decodes is about German submarine positions. The second is about unrestricted submarine warfare. The third makes him vomit. War in clear text is uglier than anyone imagined. Meanwhile, the French have their own cryptographic operation that makes room 40 look organized. You're in a Parisian basement where chain-smoking intellectuals are breaking German military codes while arguing about philosophy. The place is chaos. Papers everywhere, 17 different coffee pots, and at least 3 cryptographers who haven't left the building in a month. They're using frequency analysis, but also intuition, pattern recognition, and occasionally what can only be described as divine inspiration. One codebreaker claims he solves ciphers in his dreams. Nobody laughs because he's usually right. The Germans, for their part, are absolutely convinced their codes are secure. You're in Berlin watching them encode military orders using a system that references highway markers, train schedules, and Lutheran hymns. It's actually brilliant, except they keep using the same references. After 6 months, Allied cryptographers know German train schedules better than German conductors. They can predict troop movements based on which hymns are referenced. When the Germans sing Nun danket Eli Gott in their coded messages, the Allies know an offensive is coming. Then there's the Eastern Front, where the Russians are using codes so bad that the Germans don't initially believe they're real codes. You're watching German intercept operators refuse to pass along decoded Russian messages because they think it's disinformation. No military could be this stupid, they say. The messages must be fake. They're not fake. The Russians really are transmitting uncoded messages about troop movements because their cipher officers are drunk, incompetent, or have defected. Sometimes all three. The Battle of Tannenberg is lost partially because Russian generals send battle plans in clear text, not encoded, not even slightly disguised. Just straight up, here's exactly what we're going to do tomorrow morning at 9. The Austrians have different problems. Their empire includes a dozen different languages, and their military codes have to work in all of them. You're watching a Hungarian cipher clerk try to encode a message that will be decoded by an Italian-speaking officer using a codebook written in German. It goes about as well as you'd expect. Half the Austrian military defeats in the war can be traced to encoding errors caused by linguistic confusion. One famously garbled message leads to an artillery barrage on their own positions. The survivors joke that Austrian cryptography is more dangerous than enemy action, but the real revolution is happening at sea. Naval warfare depends entirely on coded communications, and both sides are intercepting everything. You're on a British destroyer in the North Sea, watching the radio operator receive coded German messages. He can't decode them, but he recognizes the sender's style, Every radio operator has a unique rhythm to their Morse code, like a fingerprint. He knows this is Franz from the battleship Derflinger, and Franz only sends messages when something big is happening. January 1917. The Zimmerman telegram. You're back in room 40, watching the most consequential decryption in history unfold. The message comes in pieces, intercepted from different cables, some via Mexico, some via Sweden. It's encrypted using German diplomatic code 0075, which the British have been reading for months, but haven't told anyone because revealing you've broken a code means the enemy changes it. But this message is different. This message is Germany asking Mexico to invade the United States. Nigel de Grey and Reverend William Montgomery are the first to fully decode it. Montgomery is literally a reverend who got recruited because he's good at ancient languages. He reads the decoded message 3 times, sure he's made a mistake. Germany is offering Mexico, Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico if they attack America. It's so audacious that even the codebreakers can't believe it. They check their work 17 times. They're right. The Germans really are this crazy, but here's the problem. How do you tell the Americans about this without revealing that you've broken German codes? The British come up with a brilliant lie. They claim they stole a decoded copy from the Mexican Telegraph Office. It's complete fiction, but it works. The Americans enter the war, arguably because of a decoded message that the British were never supposed to be able to read. Room 40 saves democracy and never gets credit. Most of the codebreakers die without anyone knowing what they did. Meanwhile, the war has created new encryption technologies. The Germans developed the ADF-GVX cipher, which sounds like a bad Scrabble hand but is actually terrifyingly complex. It uses a grid system combined with transposition that should be mathematically unbreakable. You're watching French cryptographer Georges Painvin try to crack it. He doesn't eat for 3 days. He loses 33 pounds in 3 months. He succeeds just in time to reveal German plans for their last major offensive. The decoded messages save Paris. Painvin never fully recovers his health. The Americans enter the war with typical American confidence and absolutely no cryptographic capability. You're watching American officers try to send coded messages using a system they bought from a catalog. The Germans are reading them in real time and laughing. The Americans don't realize they're compromised until they notice the Germans always seem to know where they're going to be. They switch to Native American code talkers, speaking Choctaw. The Germans are completely baffled. They can't even identify what language is being spoken, let alone decode it. The war creates the first industrial-scale cryptographic operations. You're in a British facility where 200 women are decoding German messages 24 hours a day. They're not allowed to tell anyone what they do. Their families think they're secretaries. They're actually reading German naval orders and saving thousands of lives. One woman, Olive Rodham, decodes a message that prevents a submarine attack on a hospital ship. She never tells anyone, not even her husband, until 50 years later. The French developed the first practical one-time pad system for their most sensitive communications. Each message uses a unique key that's used once and destroyed. It's mathematically unbreakable if used correctly. You're watching a French diplomat in Switzerland encode a message about secret peace negotiations. He burns the key immediately after use. The message he sends is perfectly secure. The problem? The recipient's copy of the key was compromised by a cleaning lady who was actually a German spy. Perfect encryption, defeated by a mop bucket. By 1918, everyone is reading everyone else's codes at least partially. The war has become a battle of information as much as bullets. You're in the German cryptographic service, watching them realize the Allies have broken their codes. The look of dawning horror on their faces when they understand how much the enemy knows is unforgettable. Every military disaster suddenly makes sense. they've been fighting an enemy who could read their minds. The war ends, but the cryptographic war continues. You're at the Paris Peace Conference 1919, where every delegation is encoding their communications while trying to decode everyone else's. The Americans are using a cipher machine called the M94, which looks like a rolling pin made of alphabet wheels. The British are using an updated version of Playfair. The French are using something so complicated that even they're not entirely sure how it works. Everyone is spying on everyone while negotiating the peace that's supposed to end all wars. The Treaty of Versailles is partially shaped by intercepted and decoded messages. You're watching the British delegation adjust their negotiating position based on decoded Italian communications. The Italians are doing the same with intercepted American messages. The Americans think they're being clever by using State Department codes that haven't been used since the Civil War. They're not being clever. Everyone has those codes. The Japanese delegation is the only one whose codes remain largely unbroken, mostly because they're using a mixture of diplomatic protocols and haiku that makes no sense even when decoded. Post-war, the code breakers are supposed to stand down. They don't. You're in the new Government Code and Cipher School in London, where Room 40's veterans are pretending to write a history of wartime codes while actually reading everyone's diplomatic traffic. The budget is hidden in the Navy estimates under stationery and printing. Parliament has no idea they're funding what will become GCHQ. The code breakers have learned that in peacetime, information is even more valuable than in war. The Americans create the Black Chamber, their first peacetime cryptographic intelligence service. You're in a hidden office in New York, where Herbert Yardley and his team are reading diplomatic messages from 20 different countries. They're particularly focused on Japanese codes, breaking them just in time for the Washington Naval Conference. The American negotiators know exactly what Japan's bottom line is before negotiations begin. They get everything they want. The Japanese wonder how the Americans became such good negotiators. They never suspect their codes are compromised. Commercial encryption explodes in the 1920s. Every bank, every major corporation, every stock exchange is using codes. You're on Wall Street, watching traders send encrypted messages that move millions of dollars in seconds. The encryption is supposed to prevent insider trading. Instead, it enables it. If you can break your competitors' codes, you know their moves before they make them. Several fortunes are made by code breakers who go into finance. Several more are lost by financiers who don't realize their codes are broken. The Soviet Union emerges with an entirely new approach to cryptography. They're not just encoding messages, they're encoding the encoders. You're watching Soviet cryptographers work in cells where no one person knows the entire system. The keys are changed daily, sometimes hourly. The code books are printed on flash paper that burns at a touch. It's paranoia elevated to art. It's also incredibly effective. Western intelligence services spend decades trying to break Soviet codes with limited success. Then there's the Enigma machine. In 1918, Arthur Scherbius patents a mechanical cipher machine that uses rotors to create polyalphabetic substitution automatically. You're watching him demonstrate it to German military officials who don't understand what they're looking at. It's a typewriter that creates codes so complex that brute force breaking them would take longer than the universe has existed. The Germans buy it for their military. The machine that will define World War II cryptography starts as a commercial failure that almost bankrupts its inventor. By 1920, the world has learned that modern war is information war. Every military is creating cryptographic services. Every foreign ministry is hiring mathematicians. The age of gentlemen amateurs reading each other's mail is ending. The age of industrial cryptography is beginning. The machines are coming, and they're bringing computational power that will make human code breakers obsolete. Or so everyone thinks. Comment if you think you could have been a code breaker in World War I. Could you stare at gibberish for days until patterns emerged? Could you keep secrets that might save lives? Or would you crack under the pressure like so many did, ending up in asylums, muttering about frequency distributions and substitution patterns? Because here's the thing about breaking codes, sometimes the codes break you back. Poland, 1932. You're in a basement in Warsaw, where 3 mathematics students are about to save the world. Marian Rajewski, Henryk Zygalski, and Jerzy Rojicki are staring at an Enigma machine the Polish intelligence service somehow acquired. It looks like a typewriter had angry sex with a telephone switchboard. The Germans think it's unbreakable, trillions of possible settings, changing daily. The Poles are about to prove them wrong, using mathematics so beautiful it could make you cry. Rajewski isn't trying to break Enigma through brute force. He's using permutation theory and group theory, mathematical concepts most military cryptographers haven't even heard of. You watch him chain smoke through 18-hour days, filling notebooks with equations that look like alien languages. He realizes the Germans are making a crucial mistake. They're sending the message key twice at the beginning of each transmission. It's a tiny weakness, barely noticeable, but in cryptography, tiny weaknesses are catastrophic. It's like leaving your house key under the doormat, but the doormat is on Mars and only visible through mathematical analysis. The Poles build bomber machines, electromechanical devices that click through Enigma settings like the world's most expensive slot machines. You're watching one operate. It sounds like 1,000 typewriters having a nervous breakdown. Each bomber can check thousands of settings per hour, but there are still billions of possibilities. The Polish cryptographers don't care. They're not checking every possibility, they're eliminating impossible ones. It's the difference between searching every house in a city and knowing which neighborhood to check. Meanwhile, the Germans are upgrading Enigma constantly. More rotors, more complexity, more confidence that their communications are secure. You're in Berlin watching Wehrmacht officers encode invasion plans with absolute certainty that no one can read them. They're discussing the invasion of Poland, ironically, in messages the Poles are reading almost in real time. The Polish cryptographers know they're going to be invaded before most of the German army does. July 1939. The Poles know war is coming, and they can't hold on to their secret alone. You're at a meeting in the Karpaty Woods near Warsaw, where Polish intelligence is about to give the British and French the greatest intelligence gift in history. They reveal they've been breaking Enigma for 7 years. The British cryptographer Dilly Knox, who's been trying to break Enigma using linguistic analysis, literally can't speak for several minutes. It's like spending years trying to pick a lock with poetry, only to watch someone solve it with math. The Poles hand over everything, their techniques, their machines, even replica Enigma machines they've built. The French intelligence officer is crying actual tears. The British are maintaining stiff upper lips, while internally screaming with joy. Within weeks, Poland is invaded. Rajewski and his team escape, barely. Their work moves to Bletchley Park in England, about to become the most important building in the war that nobody knows exists. Bletchley Park, 1940. You're walking through what looks like a British country estate, but is actually the nerve center of Allied intelligence. It smells like wet tweed, cigarette smoke, and brilliance. There are chess champions, crossword experts, mathematicians, and at least one guy who's only here because he won a newspaper puzzle contest. They're about to industrialize code breaking in ways that will birth the computer age. You're in Hut 8 with Alan Turing, and let's be clear, this man is operating on a different plane of existence from everyone else. While others are trying to break codes, Turing is redesigning the concept of computation itself. He's building an electromechanical brain called the bomb, based on the Polish bomber but exponentially more powerful. You watch him explain his design to engineers who look like their heads might explode. He's not just breaking Enigma, he's creating the theoretical framework for every computer you've ever used. The bomb is the size of a wardrobe and sounds like a million angry bees. You're watching it work through Enigma settings, electrical circuits eliminating possibilities faster than human minds can follow. When it finds a potential setting, it stops with a satisfying clunk. The operators, mostly women who aren't allowed to know what they're actually doing, call it the machine gun because of the noise. They're firing mathematical bullets at Nazi secrets and they're winning. But naval Enigma is different. The Kriegsmarine uses different procedures, more rotors, better security. You're watching Turing literally wrestling with the problem, pacing for hours, not eating, not sleeping. He has a coffee mug chained to a radiator because he keeps losing mugs. His colleagues think he's insane. He probably is, but it's the kind of insanity that wins wars. He develops a statistical method called Banburismus that's so complex even other mathematicians at Bletchley can't fully understand it. May 1941, the British capture U-110 and its Enigma machine with all the current settings. You're watching the boarding party enter the submarine, knowing it could be booby-trapped, knowing they have minutes before it sinks. They grab everything, the machine, the code books, and crucially, the short signal book. The Germans never know it was captured. They continue using the same codes, never suspecting that every U-boat transmission is being read at Bletchley. The Battle of the Atlantic turns on stolen codebooks that smell like diesel and seawater. The intelligence from Enigma, codenamed Ultra, is so valuable that sometimes they can't use it. You're watching Churchill read decoded messages about upcoming bombing raids on British cities. He knows when and where the bombs will fall, but if he evacuates those areas, the Germans will know Enigma is broken, so he lets his own people die to protect the secret. He later calls it his most difficult decision of the war. The code breakers at Bletchley know what's happening. They decode messages about attacks they can't prevent. Several have nervous breakdowns. One attempts suicide. They're winning the information war, but losing pieces of their souls. The Germans, meanwhile, have absolute faith in Enigma. You're in a U-boat in the Atlantic watching the radio operator encode position reports, never knowing that within hours, Allied convoys are being rerouted around him. The Germans can't understand how the Allies keep finding their submarines. They blame everything: spies, radar, even supernatural powers, everything except Enigma being broken. When someone suggests Enigma might be compromised, they're literally laughed at. The machine is mathematically unbreakable, they say. Mathematics doesn't lie. They're right about the last part. Bletchley grows from a few hundred people to thousands. You're watching an industrial-scale intelligence operation disguised as a country house party. There are chess games happening next to machines, decoding tank positions. Someone is playing violin while breaking diplomatic codes. The canteen serves terrible food, while conversations at nearby tables are reshaping the war. It's surreal and deadly serious simultaneously. Everyone here knows they're doing something historic, but they can't tell anyone, not their families, not their friends, not even each other sometimes. 1943. The Germans add a fourth rotor to naval Enigma, and suddenly Bletchley is blind. You're watching the panic as U-boats disappear from Allied intelligence. Ships are being sunk at rates not seen since 1940. The code breakers work around the clock trying to break the new system. Turing has what he calls his funny turns, periods where he seems to leave his body and exist purely in mathematical space. He emerges with new techniques, but it's not enough. They need more computing power. Enter Colossus, the world's first programmable digital computer. You're watching Tommy Flowers, a post office engineer, build a machine that shouldn't exist yet. It uses 1,500 vacuum tubes, and everyone says it will never work because tubes are too unreliable. Flowers pays for much of it himself because even Bletchley thinks he's crazy. When it's turned on for the first time, the room temperature rises 10 degrees from the heat of the tubes. It works. It can break Lorenz cipher messages, Hitler's personal encryption system, in hours instead of weeks. Colossus is reading Hitler's personal messages. You're watching operators decode the Führer's discussions with his generals, his paranoid rants, his increasingly delusional orders. The Allies know German strategy better than most German officers. They know about the V-weapons, the jet fighters, the last-ditch offensives. They're reading the collapse of the Third Reich in real time, encoded in messages the Germans are certain are secure. D-Day planning relies entirely on ultra-intelligence. You're watching Allied commanders plan the invasion with perfect knowledge of German positions, except they have to pretend they don't know. They send reconnaissance flights to photograph locations they already know about. They interrogate prisoners about information they already have. It's the largest theater performance in history, and if they slip once, if they reveal their reading enigma, the entire invasion fails. The Germans never figure it out. Even after the war, most refuse to believe Enigma was broken. You're reading post-war interrogations where German officers insist there must have been spies, that Enigma was mathematically impossible to break. When shown the evidence, some literally cannot process it. Their entire worldview was built on Enigma's security. Finding out it was broken is like finding out gravity works backwards. The Pacific Theater has its own cryptographic war. The Americans break Japanese purple cipher, their diplomatic code, before Pearl Harbor. You're watching American cryptographers read Japanese discussions about attacking America, while American commanders dismiss the intelligence as impossible. They can't believe Japan would be that stupid. Japan is exactly that stupid. The attack happens exactly as the coded messages described. The code breakers are right, but being right doesn't matter if nobody believes you. The Japanese Navy's JN-25 code is different. You're watching American cryptographers in Hawaii work in a basement that floods during high tide. They're breaking Japanese naval codes while standing in ankle-deep seawater. The intelligence they produce wins Midway, arguably the turning point of the Pacific War. 4 Japanese carriers sunk because American code breakers figured out that AF means Midway Island. The Japanese Navy never recovers. The code talkers expand beyond Navajo to include Comanche, Choctaw, and other Native American languages. You're watching a Navajo code talker on Iwo Jima encoding messages while under fire. The Japanese have captured other American codes and are sending false messages. The code talkers are the only communication the Americans can trust. Native American languages, suppressed and nearly destroyed by the American government, are now saving American lives. The irony is not lost on the code talkers. Drop a comment about what you think was the most crucial moment in World War II cryptography. Was it the Poles cracking Enigma, Turing's bomber, the capture of U-110, or maybe something I haven't covered yet? Because we're about to enter the Cold War, where cryptography goes nuclear, literally and figuratively. August 1945. The war ends with atomic fire, but the cryptographic war instantly transforms into something colder. You're in Arlington Hall, Virginia, where American cryptographers are pivoting from reading Japanese military codes to attacking Soviet diplomatic traffic. The same people who spent years breaking Axis codes are now targeting their former allies. The woman at the desk next to you was decoding kamikaze orders last month. Today she's working on Soviet trade negotiations. The war is over, but the war never ends. The Soviets, paranoid even by Soviet standards, have been using one-time pads for their most sensitive communications. Mathematically unbreakable if used correctly. You're watching American cryptographer Meredith Gardner stare at intercepted Soviet messages that should be impossible to decrypt. But the Soviets made one tiny mistake. They reused some one-time pads during the chaos of World War II. It's like using the same unbreakable lock twice. Suddenly it's not unbreakable anymore. Project Venona is born in absolute secrecy. Even President Truman doesn't know about it initially. You're watching Gardner slowly decrypt Soviet intelligence communications from 1944. The messages reveal Soviet spies throughout the American government, including the Manhattan Project, Klaus Fuchs, Julius Rosenberg, dozens of others. The decoded messages are so explosive that FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover initially refuses to believe them. Soviet penetration of the American government goes deeper than anyone imagined. But here's the catch. They can't use most of this information publicly without revealing they're reading Soviet codes. You're watching American intelligence agencies know about Soviet spies, but unable to arrest them without compromising Venona. It's Bletchley Park all over again, but now the enemy is supposedly at peace with you. The Rosenbergs are executed based on evidence that can never be fully revealed. Critics call it a witch hunt. The cryptographers know it's real, but can't say anything. They'll take this secret to their graves, and many do. Meanwhile, the Soviets are having their own cryptographic revolution. You're in a bunker under Moscow watching Soviet cryptographers develop new cipher systems based on advanced mathematics. They assume correctly that all their communications are being intercepted. They assume correctly that the Americans are trying to break their codes. They develop FileK, a cipher machine that makes Enigma look like a children's toy. 10 rotors, irregular stepping, the mechanical complexity of a Swiss watch combined with the paranoia of Stalin. The British, not to be outdone, continue their cryptographic operations at what's now called GCHQ. You're watching them intercept communications from their former colonies, their allies, everyone. The sun never sets on British signals intelligence. They're reading French diplomatic cables about Indochina, Egyptian military communications about Suez, even American discussions about British loan negotiations. Everyone spies on everyone, but the British have been doing it longer and better than anyone else. The invention of the transistor changes everything. You're at Bell Labs in 1947, watching scientists create the component that will revolutionize cryptography. Suddenly, encryption machines can be smaller, faster, more complex. The room-sized bombs of Bletchley will become pocket-sized devices. But transistors also mean computers, and computers mean both better encryption and better code breaking. It's an arms race where the weapons evolve faster than anyone can deploy them. The Korean War erupts, and cryptography becomes tactical. You're with American forces, reading Chinese military communications in almost real time. The Chinese are using recycled Japanese codebooks from World War II, apparently not realizing the Americans broke those codes years ago. Chinese commanders are discussing attack plans in codes that American sergeants can decrypt with reference cards. It should be a turkey shoot, except the Chinese have so many soldiers that knowing their plans doesn't always help. The National Security Agency is created in 1952, so secret that insiders joke NSA stands for no such agency. You're in Fort Meade, Maryland, watching the construction of the largest intelligence organization in history. Thousands of mathematicians, linguists, and engineers, all dedicated to reading other people's mail. The budget is classified, hidden in black programs that Congress votes on without knowing what they're funding. Democracy in action. If democracy means elected officials deliberately kept ignorant, the Soviets launched Sputnik, and suddenly space becomes another domain for cryptographic warfare. You're watching American intercept stations track Soviet satellites, trying to decode their signals. Are they weather observations or military reconnaissance? Nobody knows because Soviet space communications use ciphers that change with orbital position. The satellites themselves become cipher keys, their position determining which code is used. It's celestial cryptography, and it's absolutely insane. The Berlin Tunnel, Operation Gold, is perhaps the most audacious cryptographic operation of the Cold War. You're underground in Soviet-occupied Berlin, watching American and British engineers tap Soviet communication cables. For 11 months they intercept and decrypt thousands of Soviet military communications. The intelligence is so good, it seems suspicious. It is suspicious. The Soviets knew about the tunnel from day one thanks to George Blake, a British double agent. They're feeding disinformation through compromised channels while protecting their real communications. It's espionage theater, and everyone's acting. Computers are revolutionizing cryptanalysis. You're watching IBM machines at NSA process intercepted communications at speeds impossible for humans. Pattern recognition that would take human analysts years happens in hours. But the Soviets have computers too, and they're using them to create codes of impossible complexity. Both sides are in a computational arms race where Moore's law is a national security issue. The Cuban Missile Crisis unfolds through intercepted communications. You're in the White House Situation Room as Kennedy reads decoded Soviet messages about missile installations. The cryptographers at NSA are working around the clock, providing intelligence that literally prevents nuclear war. One decoded message reveals Soviet commanders have nuclear weapons and authority to use them. Another reveals ships carrying missiles turning back. The world doesn't end because American cryptographers are reading Soviet mail faster than Soviet commanders can encrypt it. Vietnam becomes a cryptographic nightmare. You're watching American forces try to intercept Viet Cong communications in jungle conditions where moisture destroys electronics and encrypting machines weighing hundreds of pounds have to be carried through rice paddies. The Viet Cong use simple codes, often based on poetry or folk songs that American cryptographers don't understand even when decoded. A message about moving buffalo might be about moving troops, or it might actually be about buffalo. Cultural encryption defeats technological superiority. The 1960s bring electronic warfare. Signals intelligence isn't just about breaking codes anymore. It's about intercepting everything. You're on a US Navy ship, bristling with antennas, intercepting every electronic emission from the Soviet coast. Radio, radar, even the electromagnetic emissions from electric typewriters. Yes, typewriters. IBM Selectrics emit signals that can be intercepted and decoded. Every keystroke broadcasts the message being typed. Soviet embassies worldwide are basically broadcasting their documents to anyone with the right equipment. The Walker spy ring begins operating in 1968. John Anthony Walker, a US Navy warrant officer, walks into the Soviet embassy in Washington and offers to sell cryptographic keys. You're watching him photograph key cards in a Navy communications center while his colleagues drink coffee 10 feet away. For 17 years he gives the Soviets the ability to read American naval communications. The damage is incalculable. Soviet submarines know exactly where American forces are because Walker sold the keys for pocket change compared to the intelligence value. The age of satellite reconnaissance brings new cryptographic challenges. You're in a ground station receiving images from Corona satellites. The images are encrypted, but more importantly, the fact that America can photograph Soviet missile sites from space is itself secret. The photographs have to be encrypted, the communications about the photographs have to be encrypted, even the schedules of when satellites pass over specific locations have to be encrypted. It's classification inception, secrets protecting secrets. Computer networks begin connecting military installations, and with them come new vulnerabilities. You're watching ARPANET, the Internet's ancestor, being built with encryption as an afterthought. The designers assume only trusted institutions will connect. They're naive. Within years, people are intercepting ARPANET communications, reading military research, stealing classified information. The network designed to survive nuclear war can't survive curious graduate students. The Pueblo incident shows how valuable cryptographic equipment has become. North Korea captures the USS Pueblo and its encryption machines. You're watching NSA frantically change every code, every key, every procedure, assuming everything is compromised. The Soviets now have working American cipher machines. Years of communications security evaporate overnight. The Cold War balance shifts because one ship was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Project Eshmrock reveals that American telegraph companies have been giving NSA copies of international telegrams since 1945. You're in a warehouse full of magnetic tapes, each containing millions of messages between American citizens and foreign countries. All intercepted, many decoded, most illegal. When Congress finds out in 1975, they're shocked. The cryptographers aren't. They've been reading everyone's mail for so long, they've forgotten it's supposed to be wrong. The Church Committee investigations exposed decades of cryptographic surveillance. You're watching NSA officials testify to Congress, carefully avoiding specifics about capabilities. They can't say what they can break, or how quickly. Even admitting certain mathematical techniques exist would compromise operations. Congress wants oversight, but doesn't understand what they're overseeing. It's like asking someone to regulate nuclear weapons without explaining atomic theory. Comment below if you think mass surveillance was inevitable once computers entered the picture, or if you believe privacy could have been protected with different choices. Also, how many of you are now paranoid about your electronic devices? Because if you're not at least a little paranoid after this chapter, you haven't been paying attention. 1976 changes everything. You're at Stanford watching Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman announce public key cryptography to a room of confused academics. They're proposing something that sounds impossible, an encryption system where you can publicly share your encryption key without compromising security. It's like giving everyone your address, but still being the only one who can open your mail. The NSA representatives in the audience look like they're having strokes. Not because the idea is new to them, but because civilians just invented something they thought only they knew. The concept is beautiful in its simplicity and revolutionary in its implications. You're watching Diffie explain it using colors. Imagine you have a secret color. I have a secret color. We mix them with a public color and exchange the results using what you sent me and my secret color. I can recreate your secret color. You can do the same with mine. But someone watching our exchange can't figure out either secret color. It's mathematical magic, except it's not magic, it's number theory that makes your brain melt. The NSA is furious. You're in a classified meeting where intelligence officials discuss whether to classify Diffie and Hellman's work retroactively. They can't. It's already published. Academic cryptography has escaped government control for the first time in history. The genie is out of the bottle, and the genie knows prime factorization. Bobby Inman, NSA director, publicly suggests that academic cryptography research should be subject to prior restraint, like atomic weapons research. Academics laugh. Then they realize he's serious. Meanwhile, at MIT, 3 researchers are about to make things worse for the NSA. Ron Revest, Adi Shamir, and Leonard Adelman create RSA, the first practical public key algorithm. You're at a Passover Seder, where Revest has the breakthrough insight after several glasses of Manischewitz. He stays up all night coding while slightly drunk. By morning, he's created an algorithm that will secure trillions of dollars in transactions. The paper describing it is titled A Method for Obtaining Digital Signatures and Public Key Crypto Systems. It's the most understated title for a world-changing invention since Fleming called penicillin interesting. The government tries to suppress RSA. You're watching NSA lawyers argue that the algorithm is a weapon, that publishing it violates arms export laws. The creators respond by printing the algorithm on t-shirts. Is wearing a t-shirt arms trafficking? The situation becomes absurd. MIT students walk around wearing cryptographic weapons on their chests. The government backs down, but the battle lines are drawn between cypherpunks, who believe encryption belongs to everyone, and government agencies who believe some secrets should stay secret. IBM develops DES, the Data Encryption Standard, with NSA involvement. You're in a meeting where NSA cryptographers suggest modifications to IBM's original design. They won't say why, just that it's important. IBM agrees, suspicious but cooperative. Years later, it's revealed the NSA was protecting against differential cryptanalysis, an attack method that wouldn't be publicly discovered for another decade. The NSA was simultaneously weakening and strengthening civilian encryption, playing three-dimensional chess, while everyone else was learning checkers. The key-length debate becomes vicious. NSA wants DES to use 56-bit keys. IBM originally proposed 64 bits. You're watching the argument, which sounds like a small difference but isn't. Every additional bit doubles the difficulty of breaking the encryption. 8 bits means the difference between breakable with effort and practically unbreakable. The NSA wins. DES uses 56 bits. Coincidentally, that's exactly the length the NSA can break with their classified supercomputers. The personal computer revolution means everyone suddenly needs encryption. You're in a garage in Cupertino watching Steve Wozniak worry about Apple II users' data security, while Steve Jobs worries about marketing. Woz wants to include encryption capabilities. Jobs thinks it will scare customers. They compromise by making encryption possible, but not default. It's a pattern that will repeat throughout Silicon Valley. Security possible but not convenient, available but not automatic. Phil Zimmermann creates PGP, Pretty Good Privacy, in 1991. You're in his basement watching him code an encryption program, so powerful that using it correctly makes you invisible to government surveillance. He's not doing this for money or fame. He's doing it because he believes privacy is a human right. When he releases PGP for free on the internet, the government comes after him with the full force of federal law. He's under investigation for arms trafficking without leaving his house. The crypto wars begin in earnest. You're in Congress watching the Clipper chip debates. The government proposes an encryption chip with a backdoor that only law enforcement can access. They promise to only use it with proper warrants. They promise it won't be abused. Tech companies laugh, then realize the government is serious. The Electronic Frontier Foundation forms to fight back. It's described as the digital equivalent of the ACLU. If the ACLU was run by hackers who really understand math, the key escrow debate gets nasty. You're watching NSA director testify that without backdoors, child predators and terrorists will run free. Privacy advocates respond that with backdoors, everyone is vulnerable to criminals and foreign governments. Both sides are right. Both sides are wrong. It's a debate about fundamental values disguised as a technical argument. Do we want a world where governments can always investigate crimes, or one where individuals can have truly private conversations? Meanwhile, encryption is becoming essential to commerce. You're watching Amazon process its first encrypted credit card transaction. Without strong encryption, e-commerce is impossible. The economy needs cryptography more than the government needs to break it. Wall Street backs the cypherpunks, not because they care about privacy, but because they care about money. Capitalism accidentally becomes the defender of cryptographic freedom. Export restrictions on encryption become increasingly absurd. You're watching a software developer trying to export a program with strong encryption. It's illegal, but he can export a book containing the same source code because books have First Amendment protection. So companies publish their encryption algorithms as books, export the books, then scan them back into computers. It's legal laundering of mathematical concepts, and everyone involved knows it's ridiculous. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source. You're in Finland watching Linus Torvalds include strong encryption in Linux. It's open source, developed internationally, and impossible to control. The US government can't stop Finnish programmers from writing code. They can't prevent Germans from improving it or Japanese from distributing it. The internet has made borders irrelevant for information, and encryption is just information. By the late 1990s, the government effectively surrenders. Export restrictions are loosened, then effectively eliminated. You're watching the signing ceremony where encryption stronger than anything the NSA could break 10 years ago is approved for export. The officials signing it look like they're attending a funeral. In a way they are. It's the funeral of government monopoly on strong cryptography. September 11th, 2001. Changes everything again. You're in NSA headquarters watching the mood shift from defeat to determination. The crypto wars are over, but the war on terror needs surveillance capabilities that make the Cold War look quaint. The Patriot Act passes with bipartisan support. Suddenly, conversations that were legally protected last week are subject to warrantless surveillance today. The encryption tools are still available, but using them now makes you suspicious. The NSA's budget explodes. You're watching contractors build server farms in Utah designed to store and analyze every electronic communication on Earth. The official position is that they're only collecting metadata. The Snowden revelations will show that's a lie, but for now everyone pretends the government respects encryption they can't break. The truth is, they're collecting everything, storing it forever, waiting for quantum computers to make today's encryption tomorrow's cleartext. Silicon Valley becomes ground zero for a new kind of conflict. You're in Apple headquarters watching engineers build encryption into iOS that even Apple can't break. It's not activism, it's business. Users want privacy, but when the San Bernardino shooter's iPhone can't be unlocked, the FBI demands Apple create a backdoor. Tim Cook refuses. It's the Crypto Wars 2.0, fought with press releases and court orders instead of code and legislation. The debate becomes philosophical. You're watching a congressional hearing where an FBI director argues that encryption is enabling a phenomenon called going dark. Criminals are using encryption the government can't break. Tech executives respond that weakening encryption makes everyone vulnerable to hackers, foreign governments, and criminals. A congresswoman who doesn't understand either position asks why they can't just make encryption that only good guys can break. The tech executives try not to laugh. They fail. Meanwhile, encryption has become invisible and ubiquitous. You're using it right now, reading this. HTTPS, the little padlock in your browser, means this communication is encrypted. Your phone automatically encrypts calls and messages. Your credit card transactions, medical records, even your pizza delivery app uses encryption. It's everywhere, invisible, essential. The cypherpunks won, but nobody noticed because victory looks like normality. Cryptocurrencies emerge, combining encryption with economics. You're watching Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever they are, release Bitcoin. It's not just digital money, it's a cryptographic proof that transforms trust from a social construct to a mathematical certainty. Suddenly, encryption isn't just protecting information, it's creating value. The same mathematics that hide secrets can now transfer wealth without banks, governments, or any trusted third party. China enters the game with different rules. You're watching the Great Firewall use encryption against itself, creating secure channels that only the government can use while blocking citizens from using VPNs. It's authoritarian cryptography, using the same mathematics that enables freedom to enforce control. The Chinese government requires backdoors in all encryption used within China. Companies comply or leave. Most comply. Russia, not to be outdone, bans encryption they can't break. You're watching Russian authorities raid offices for using Telegram, an encrypted messaging app. It's the crypto war's Eastern Front. The Russian government demands keys to all encryption. Pavel Durov, Telegram's creator, refuses and flees the country. Russian users continue using Telegram anyway, because banning mathematics is like banning gravity. You can make it illegal, but it still works. Drop a comment about whether you think we're living in a golden age of privacy, or if you believe surveillance has already won. Are your communications more or less secure than they were 20 years ago? And be honest, how many of you are now thinking about downloading Signal or another encrypted messaging app? Because if this chapter hasn't made you reconsider your digital security, the next one definitely will. 2013. You're in a Hong Kong hotel room, watching Edward Snowden hand over the most significant intelligence leak in history. The documents reveal NSA programs with names like Prism, X-Keyscore, and Boundless Informant. It's not that the government is spying. Everyone assumed that. It's the scale. They're collecting everything. Every email, every phone call, every text message, every Google search. The haystacks are infinite, and they're looking for needles that might not exist. The technical capabilities revealed are staggering. You're reading about Quantum Insert, where NSA impersonates websites to deliver malware. Bull Run, a program to deliberately weaken encryption standards. They've been inserting vulnerabilities into the encryption protocols the entire world uses. It's like discovering the people making your locks have been giving copies of the keys to the government. The tech community feels betrayed. The NSA was supposed to protect American communications, not compromise them. The MUSULA program is particularly audacious. You're watching NSA documents describe breaking into Google and Yahoo's internal networks, the connections between their data centers. These companies thought their internal communications were secure. They weren't. The NSA was reading internal Google communications better than most Google employees could. When Google engineers see the slides showing NSA inside their networks, one famously responds with a string of profanities that would make a sailor blush. Tech companies scramble to implement better encryption. You're in emergency meetings at Facebook, Google, Microsoft, all implementing encryption not to protect users from criminals but from their own government. It's a fundamental shift. Silicon Valley stops cooperating with intelligence agencies, not because they've become activist, but because their international business depends on users trusting them. European customers won't use American services if the NSA is reading everything. The Five Eyes Alliance is exposed in detail. You're learning that the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand have been sharing intelligence to bypass domestic surveillance laws. The NSA can't spy on Americans, but GCHQ can, then share the intelligence. It's jurisdiction laundering, and it's been happening for decades. Your data isn't protected by your country's laws if another country does the spying and shares the results. Meanwhile, encryption apps explode in popularity. You're watching Signal go from a niche app used by activists to mainstream communication tool. WhatsApp implements the Signal protocol, suddenly encrypting billions of messages. Telegram, despite cryptographic weaknesses, becomes the choice of protesters worldwide. The Arab Spring, Hong Kong protests, Black Lives Matter, all coordinated through encrypted channels that governments struggle to monitor. But the surveillance continues, just differently. You're watching intelligence agencies shift from breaking encryption to bypassing it. Why break the lock when you can install a camera inside the house? They're compromising devices before encryption happens. Your phone encrypts messages, but if there's malware recording your screen, encryption is irrelevant. It's like having an unbreakable safe, but someone watching you put things in it. The Chinese surveillance state makes the NSA look restrained. You're in Xinjiang watching facial recognition cameras track Uyghurs in real time. Their phones have mandatory spyware that reports everything, contacts, messages, even poetry, to police. Encryption is illegal unless the government has the keys. It's not surveillance, it's omniscience. Every digital action is monitored, analyzed, scored. Your social credit determines whether you can travel, get a loan, send your kids to good schools. Privacy isn't just dead, its corpse is being used to build the surveillance apparatus. Russia's approach is different, but equally terrifying. You're watching SORM, their surveillance system, collect everything while pretending to respect privacy. Russian law requires ISPs to install black boxes that give FSB direct access to all communications. No warrants, no oversight, just total access. Encryption is legal as long as you provide the government with keys. Don't provide keys, that's terrorism. The Russian internet isn't surveilled, it's occupied territory. The West responds with GDPR and privacy laws that tech companies immediately circumvent. You're in Silicon Valley watching lawyers create consent forms that no human can understand. Users click accept on terms of service that give away rights they don't know they have. Encryption protects data in transit, but companies collect everything anyway. Your messages are encrypted, but the metadata, who you talk to, when, how often, tells stories encryption can't hide. Quantum computing looms as the next crisis. You're at IBM watching quantum computers that can barely factor small numbers today, but will break RSA encryption tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, literally, but soon enough that everyone's panicking. The NSA is allegedly storing encrypted communications they can't break now, waiting for quantum computers to decrypt them later. It's called harvest now, decrypt later, and it means your encrypted messages today might be X'd in a decade. Post-quantum cryptography is being developed in response. You're watching mathematicians create encryption based on problems even quantum computers can't solve efficiently. Lattice-based cryptography, hash-based signatures, multivariate polynomials, the names alone make your head hurt. The mathematics is so complex that even explaining why it works requires a PhD. But it has to work, because if quantum computers break current encryption without replacement, the digital economy collapses. Meanwhile, AI is making surveillance easier without breaking encryption. You're watching systems that analyze encrypted traffic patterns to determine what's being communicated without decrypting it. If you send encrypted messages every Tuesday at 3 p.m. to the same person, and that person always travels Wednesday morning, AI can infer you're coordinating travel without reading a single message. It's behavioral cryptanalysis, and it's terrifyingly effective. The cryptocurrency world is having its own crisis. You're watching ransomware operators encrypt entire hospitals, cities, pipelines, demanding Bitcoin payment. Encryption, the tool of freedom, has become a weapon of extortion. The same mathematics that protects dissidents enables criminals. Colonial Pipeline pays millions in Bitcoin to decrypt their own systems. The hackers are never caught because cryptocurrency plus encryption equals perfect crime, at least until someone makes a mistake. 2020. The pandemic pushes everything online, and suddenly encryption is critical infrastructure. You're watching Zoom implement end-to-end encryption after discovering their definition of encrypted was more marketing than mathematics. Every business, school, hospital now depends on encrypted communications. The shift that would have taken decades happens in months. Your grandmother is using encryption technology that spy agencies couldn't break 20 years ago, and she doesn't even know it. But the pandemic also normalizes surveillance. You're watching contact tracing apps that promise privacy through encryption while collecting location data. Health passports that cryptographically prove vaccination while creating databases of medical information. It's surveillance for safety, the most dangerous kind because people accept it willingly. The same encryption that protects the data enables its collection. The Pegasus revelations show how governments really break encryption. They don't. You're reading about NSO Group's spyware that turns phones into surveillance devices. It doesn't break WhatsApp's encryption. It reads messages before they're encrypted and after they're decrypted. Journalists, activists, politicians worldwide have been targeted. The phone in your pocket, the device you trust with your most private thoughts, is potentially your worst enemy. Encryption protects the channel, but the endpoints are compromised. Meanwhile, deepfakes are destroying trust in ways encryption can't fix. You're watching fake videos of politicians saying things they never said, created with AI that's getting better daily. Cryptographic signatures can verify real videos, but most people don't check. The problem isn't protecting information anymore, it's determining what information is real. We solved the problem of secure communication just in time for communication itself to become unreliable. Big Tech's encryption promises ring hollow. You're in Meta headquarters watching them announce end-to-end encryption for all messages while simultaneously developing AI that analyzes encrypted messages for advertising. They can't read your messages, but they can analyze patterns, connections, timing. It's privacy theater, giving users the feeling of security while extracting value from metadata. The lock on your door is perfect, but they're analyzing your footsteps. China's digital yuan represents the future of financial surveillance. You're watching transactions that are cryptographically secure, but completely transparent to the government. Every purchase tracked, every transaction recorded, all protected by encryption that ensures only the government can surveil you. It's the paradox of modern cryptography. The same mathematics that enables privacy enables perfect surveillance when controlled by authority. The EU's proposed ban on end-to-end encryption for child safety shows the eternal conflict. You're in Brussels watching politicians argue that protecting children requires breaking encryption. Tech companies respond that breaking encryption endangers children by making their data vulnerable. Both sides invoke protecting children while proposing opposite solutions. It's the crypto wars again, but now with moral absolutism that makes compromise impossible. Comment below about whether you think encryption will save or doom privacy. Are we heading toward a world where cryptography makes us truly free, or one where it enables perfect surveillance? And seriously, after everything you've learned, do you still trust that the messages you send are really private? Because here's the thing about modern encryption, it's perfect in theory and broken in practice, secure in mathematics and compromised in implementation. 2024 and beyond. You're standing at the edge of tomorrow, watching quantum computers in underground bunkers race toward the cryptographic apocalypse. IBM, Google, and classified facilities you'll never know about are building machines that compute with the universe's fundamental uncertainty. The same quantum mechanics that makes these computers possible makes predicting when they'll break current encryption impossible. It could be 5 years or 50, but everyone's preparing like it's tomorrow. You're in a meeting at NIST where they're standardizing post-quantum cryptography. The atmosphere is tense. Every algorithm proposed might protect the world's secrets for the next century, or it might fail spectacularly when someone discovers a mathematical shortcut. The mathematicians presenting look exhausted. They're not just creating encryption, They're trying to predict what mathematical discoveries haven't been made yet. It's like building armor against weapons that don't exist. The transition will be brutal. You're watching companies realize they need to inventory every system using encryption and upgrade it all. Every certificate, every protocol, every stored secret needs quantum-resistant protection. It's Y2K. If Y2K could read your credit card numbers, the cost will be astronomical. The companies that don't upgrade in time will simply cease to exist when quantum computers come online. Your encrypted data today is tomorrow's clear text. Homomorphic encryption promises computation on encrypted data without decrypting it. You're watching demonstrations where cloud servers process data they can't read. It's like having someone solve a puzzle while blindfolded, getting the right answer without seeing the pieces. Medical research on encrypted patient data, financial analysis on encrypted transactions, AI training on encrypted personal information, privacy and utility, finally compatible. Except it's currently 1,000 times slower than regular computation and nobody knows how to make it practical. Zero-knowledge proofs are even weirder. You're watching someone prove they know a password without revealing the password, prove they're over 21 without revealing their age, prove they have money without showing their balance. It's mathematical magic that shouldn't be possible, but is. Imagine proving you can speak French without saying a single French word. That's what zero-knowledge proofs do with information. The applications are staggering if anyone can figure out how to make them user-friendly. Blockchain technology has evolved beyond cryptocurrency into something nobody fully understands. You're watching decentralized systems that don't just resist censorship, they make it mathematically impossible. Distributed computing that can't be stopped, contracts that execute themselves, organizations that exist nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. It's either the future of human organization or the world's most elaborate Ponzi scheme. Maybe both, but here's the dark side. AI is getting scary good at breaking things. You're watching machine learning systems find vulnerabilities in cryptographic implementations that humans never noticed. Side-channel attacks that read encryption keys from the sound of computers thinking. Power analysis that extracts secrets from fluctuations in electricity usage. The AI doesn't break the math. It breaks the physics around the math. Every implementation has flaws, and AI is finding them all. The geopolitics of encryption is fracturing the internet. You're watching the splinternet form: Chinese internet, Russian internet, American internet, each with incompatible encryption standards. A message encrypted in Beijing might be unreadable in Berlin, not because the encryption is unbreakable, but because the systems don't speak the same mathematical language. The global network is becoming tribal networks, separated by cryptographic borders more impermeable than physical ones. Digital identity is the next battlefield. You're watching governments implement digital IDs that are cryptographically secure and completely traceable. Estonia's system lets you do everything online: vote, pay taxes, get married, all through encrypted channels that create perfect records of your entire life. It's convenient, efficient, and terrifying. Every interaction leaves a cryptographic fingerprint. Privacy isn't dead, it's been replaced by transparent encryption, where you're secure from everyone except the entity that matters most. The metaverse, whatever that ends up being, will run on encryption. You're watching virtual worlds where your avatar's possessions are cryptographically yours, where virtual real estate has encrypted deeds, where entire economies exist in mathematical space. People are paying millions of real dollars for encrypted certificates, saying they own virtual land. It's either the future of human interaction or history's greatest fool's gold rush. The encryption is perfect. The value is debatable. Biometric encryption is everywhere and nowhere. Your face unlocks your phone, but you're not using your face. You're using a mathematical representation of your face stored in encrypted form. You're watching systems that convert fingerprints, retinas, even DNA into encryption keys. You literally become your password. It's unbreakable security until someone steals your biometric data, then it's unfixable vulnerability. You can change a password, you can't change your fingerprints. Meanwhile, encryption is becoming biological. You're in a lab watching scientists encode data in DNA, using the 4 bases as a quaternary code. A gram of DNA can store all the data humanity has ever produced, encrypted in sequences that make chemical sense but informational nonsense without the key. Bacteria are being programmed as biological encryption machines, processing secure communications through metabolic pathways. It's not science fiction anymore, it's just science. The Internet of Things means everything encrypts. Your toaster talks to your phone, your car talks to your house, your pacemaker talks to your doctor's computer. You're watching billions of devices communicate in encrypted channels, each a potential vulnerability. A smart light bulb with weak encryption becomes a backdoor to your entire network. The same mathematics that protects nuclear secrets is protecting your refrigerator's shopping list, and failing at both because implementation is harder than theory. Neural interfaces are coming, and they'll need encryption we haven't invented yet. You're watching neural intig demonstrations where thoughts control computers. Those thoughts will need encryption. Imagine someone hacking your brain-computer interface, reading your thoughts, inserting ideas. The encryption protecting your neurons will need to be perfect, because a breach doesn't just steal data, it steals consciousness. We're about to encrypt the human mind, and we have no idea how. The future of encryption might not be mathematical at all. You're watching quantum entanglement experiments that transmit information instantly across any distance, impossible to intercept because interception destroys the entanglement. It's not even encryption anymore. It's physics preventing eavesdropping. China has quantum communication satellites. The US is building quantum networks. It's a new kind of space race, where the prize is unbreakable communication, but perfect encryption might be the worst thing that could happen to humanity. You're in a philosophy seminar where ethicists debate the implications of truly unbreakable encryption. Child abuse material transmitted unstoppably, terrorist communications that can't be intercepted, criminal conspiracies that leave no trace. The same technology that protects dissidents protects predators. The mathematics doesn't care about morality. The solution might be social, not technical. You're watching new proposals for translucent encryption, systems where courts can access communications with proper warrants, but only through processes that leave unchangeable records. Every government access logged in blockchain, every warrant cryptographically signed, every abuse detectable. It's trying to balance liberty and security through mathematics, replacing trust with verification. AI is changing what needs encryption. You're watching systems that generate synthetic media indistinguishable from reality. Every photo, video, audio recording will need cryptographic proof of authenticity. Without it, nothing is believable. The problem isn't hiding information anymore. It's proving information is real. We're entering an era where the default assumption is everything is fake, unless cryptographically proven otherwise. Climate change might kill encryption before quantum computers do. You're in data centers consuming the power of small cities to run encrypted computations. Bitcoin alone uses more electricity than Argentina. Post-quantum encryption will require even more computation. We might face a choice between privacy and planetary survival. The mathematics of encryption could be perfect, while the physics of running it destroys the world. The far future is even stranger. You're watching proposals for encryption that uses the universe itself as a computer. Cosmic rays as random number generators, pulsar timing as encryption keys, the cosmic microwave background as an unbreakable one-time pad. Civilizations might communicate through encrypted gravity waves, messages encoded in the fabric of space-time itself. It sounds insane until you remember that 50 years ago, so did smartphones. But here's the ultimate truth about encryption's future. It won't be determined by mathematics or technology, but by human choices. Every society will get the encryption it deserves. Authoritarian states will have perfect surveillance through corrupted encryption. Free societies will have strong encryption that protects both heroes and villains. The mathematics is neutral. The implementation is political. We started this journey with Caesar hiding military movements through simple letter substitution. We're ending it with quantum computers, DNA storage, and encrypted thoughts. The technology has changed beyond recognition, but the human need remains constant, the need to share secrets with some while hiding them from others. That need created cryptography 3,000 years ago. That need will drive its evolution for the next 3,000 years. The future of encryption isn't just about protecting data, it's about defining what privacy means when everything is connected, what identity means when everything is digital, what trust means when everything can be verified mathematically. We're not just encrypting information anymore, we're encrypting reality itself. So here's my final question for you, the one that everyone watching this needs to answer. In a world where perfect encryption is possible, but perfect surveillance is too, where every protection enables both freedom and oppression, where the same mathematics that protects democracy can destroy it, what kind of cryptographic future do you want to live in? And more importantly, what are you willing to sacrifice to get it? Comment below with your thoughts, fears, hopes about where encryption is heading. Are we building a cryptographic utopia or a mathematical prison? Will our grandchildren thank us for the encryption we're creating, or curse us for the surveillance we're enabling? Because here's the thing, the history of encryption isn't finished. We're writing it right now. Every time we send a message, make a purchase, cast a vote, every one of us is part of this story. The question isn't whether encryption will shape the future. The question is whether we'll shape encryption, or whether it will shape us. And honestly, after walking through 3,000 years of humans trying to keep secrets, from Caesar to quantum computers, from invisible ink to encrypted DNA, I think the answer is both. We create encryption, and then it creates us right back. It's the most human technology we've ever invented, our paranoia and ingenuity encoded in mathematics, our need for privacy and connection balanced in algorithms. Thanks for taking this soft walk through the hard mathematics of human secrecy with me. Stay paranoid, stay secure, and remember, in the world of encryption, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not trying to read your messages. They definitely are.